are ready to bring your designs from Illustrator into Photoshop to create a mock-up, you're going to start with a mock-up file. So the goal is to have something like this where you have all the pieces for your event displayed on one nice mock-up display. In Illustrator, your designs should look something like this, where you have your invitation on Artboard 1, Artboards 2, 3, and 4 are other items that could be used at your event. If you guys want to use a file that I have from Schoology, you can go onto our Schoology page. If you look for that blue PS Mockup folder, you're going to see a bunch of different Photoshop files. Anything that ends in .psd will open up in Photoshop. So for this one, I'm going to start with greeting card tall. When I double click on it, I'll have the option to download. So we'll hit that arrow to download. And any file that ends in .psd, when I double click, it will launch Photoshop even if it's not open, and it will open that file. So this is the file, this is the mock-up file that I started with when I was creating this design. The nice thing about these is you can edit and manipulate, change anything to make it work for you. The key to these is looking in your layers. If we look in the layers, it says with this folder, greeting card mockup. If I expand that, I'm going to see another folder for the card. And this blue thumbnail that says replace design, if I double click on this thumbnail, it'll open up a new tab, and this is where you're going to replace their artwork with yours. So the first thing I'm going to do is switch from this hue saturation layer up to the very top. I'll go into Illustrator, select my invitation, Command C to copy, go back into Photoshop, Command V to paste, and I'm going to paste in as pixels. If you want to keep the white border, you can adjust the size so that it's inside of that. If you don't want to keep that white border, then make sure your design covers that entire rectangle. When you're done resizing, hit return. And to make this show up in your mock-up, you've got to save it. So we're going to hit Command S. I can close that tab, and now my design appears on the mock-up. Once your card is in there, then you can start editing the other pieces. So we have the pencil. If you want to keep the pencil, you can keep that. You can move it around. If we select that layer, you can just click and drag. And this is multiple layers, so now I see that shadow is left. I'm going to undo. To move more than one thing, you want to select multiple layers. So click on the top one, hold Shift, click on the bottom, and then you can move those together. If you want to change the color of the envelope, expand that, look for the thumbnail, we would double click. This brings us into a whole new group, and we can double click on the color. When you get your color picker, you would first pick your color on this vertical slide bar, and then you can pick your color inside of that box. Once you like it, click OK. Again, you want to save, close this tab, and then we can see that color change. The next thing is that background. So if you look in the backgrounds, you have another color picker, so we can go through, we can pick a different color, or you guys can bring in your own picture. So if you find a picture that you want to use, you can click and drag that into Photoshop. It'll open in another tab, and then just make sure you have your move tool selected. We'll click and drag, holding, and let go here. The important thing is the placement of that layer. So right now mine is at the bottom. That's good. It's going to be behind everything. We'll hit Command T to transform, and then just stretch that so that it fills the whole artboard. Return on the keyboard to get out of transformation mode, and now we have a nice new background. And you guys can use anything. It can be colors, it can be texture, it can be marble, whatever works for your event, work with that for your background. I'm going to move my invitation. I'm going to start with the envelope. With the move tool, I'm just going to click and drag that up to the corner. My card is going to be 3 layers. So I'm going to hold Shift, move my card up, and then we can start adding the other components from Illustrator. So for these, again, you're going to copy, jump back into Photoshop, paste as pixels, And then if you're bringing in an image like this where it's just a flat image and you want to add some depth, you guys can go to the bottom of your toolbar where it says FX. This is where we add effects, and you can add a drop shadow. If we look at the drop shadow that was already on there, we want to try and mimic that. So you can go through and you can start to change some of the things like the angle, the distance, the spread, and the size of that shadow. The opacity is a little light. Make that a little bit darker. That looks better. So again, just little things to kind of add depth and dimension to your design. If you wanted to add something like the cupcakes, you can bring a picture in, and then you can bring in things like your toppers, any other pieces, and you guys can do everything on one mock-up, or you can do multiple files. Like you can have one mock-up for your invitation, one for the cupcakes, one for the nursery rhyme quiz, whatever works for you. Once you have these done, then you want to add your mock-ups into your portfolio. So save this. If we're on the computer, we're going to save as, and you want to save as a file that will go into your Google Slides presentation or your website. So we're going to save to your computer, and then you're going to change Photoshop to JPEG. JPEG or PNG will work well for the Google Slides or whichever type of website you're creating. Save that and then import that picture into your portfolio. Have fun with this, be creative, play around with your layout until it is beautiful.